All right, man, peace. Brothers, I remember back in 2012, Floyd Mayweather, he recorded a documentary on his life entitled 40 Days in May, which basically chronicled the time period from the Miguel Cotto fight to his incarceration due to the situation that he was involved in with his quote-unquote baby's mama, or one of his baby's mothers, Josie Harris. He had to go to prison for quote-unquote 63 days, I believe it was, which clearly to me marked it as a Masonic or Luciferian ritual to create a new character or to reinforce the new Money Mayweather character that we would see come into so much prominence on Showtime as he was leaving HBO. Either way, over the course of that documentary, Floyd Mayweather, he rattled off a list of fighters that he wanted to fight. And every all-time great fighter or even just championship fighter knows that there are two lists that he always is going to be held accountable for. The fighters that he wants to fight and the fighters that he needs to fight. Generational fighters always know that there are fighters that they must fight so that when they're evaluated 15, 20, 25, 30 years after their careers are over, the fans and the boxing pundits don't have anything to say about their fight choices. All generational boxers, fighters, and champions know that. That's why I always knew that Floyd Mayweather was going to fight Manny Pacquiao, because that was going to be the capstone on his magnificent boxing career. I'm saying all this because Errol Spence knows the same thing. We know that Errol was involved in that nearly tragic car accident where his vehicle flipped over about 500 times, like the bus did at the start of 48 Hours Part 2. Fortunately, he survived it. Hopefully that's going to make him a better person, because it seemed that his ego and his head were getting a little bit too big. He's going to be facing off against Danny Garcia. Errol Spence knows that Danny Garcia is one of the welterweights that needs to be on his resume when his career is over, or they're going to claim that he ducked him. No matter whether or not people assume that Errol can beat or will beat Danny Garcia, Errol knows that Danny Garcia is one of the fighters that he needs to fight, because Danny Garcia is a part of the Errol Spence generation. All the fighters in between the age of 28 to 31, 32 who came up through the amateur program together, they have to fight one another. They all know this. And when you watch that documentary, 40 Days in May, Floyd Mayweather, because he understood that most of the fighters that came up with him were already gone, he was also listing the names of certain fighters who appeared on the boxing scene about a half generation after him. One of those fighters being Andre Berto. He knew that he had to fight Andre Berto. And, so many people criticize Floyd for fighting Berto as his last overall fight. Floyd wanted to fight Berto for a while because he viewed Berto as a fighter with an extreme amount of talent. As most of us who watch boxing in the mid to late 2000s knows, Andre Berto was viewed as a serious problem. Floyd was at the Andre Berto versus Victor Ortiz fight, and I believe that he was expecting Andre Berto to win. Andre had the WBC belt at the time, and due to the fact that he lost to Victor Ortiz got the WBC belt, and that's why Floyd made the fight with Ortiz. So many people criticize Floyd for some of his fight choices, but for those of us who understand the chronology of the fight game, we know why he fought who he fought. Either way, it's the same thing right now with Mr. Errol Spence and Danny Garcia. Many people might say, why is he fighting Danny Garcia? Danny doesn't have a belt. Well, Danny did have a belt at one time. And Errol Spence knows that in case anything happens where Danny Garcia gets the belt back at welterweight, or if Danny moves up in weight to 154 and gets a belt there, if Danny retires and Errol Spence has never fought him, they're going to claim that he ducked him. In the same way that no matter how much people criticize Floyd for fighting Andre Berto, had Floyd not fought Andre Berto, they would have accused him of ducking Andre Berto. So we'll see what happens. They're supposed to be fighting, I believe, on December 5th of this year. As of right now, I'm going to side with Errol Spence. But keep in mind, this is his first fight back after that near tragic accident. And Danny Garcia is no one to play with. Errol should have certain advantages, but we'll see. Once again, he might be a different fighter. So they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
We got some crazy video in the show today. That's absolutely true. And we're going to start off with an unbelievable story about one of the greatest boxers in the world, the guy who survived an unbelievable Ferrari crash 1 year ago. We're talking about Errol Spence, 26-0, one of the best boxers there is. He's an unbelievable fighter. And in 2019, October 2019, almost a year ago to the date, he was involved in this horrific accident in the Dallas area around 3 o'clock in the morning where he flipped his Ferrari. It rolled 5 times. He was ejected from the video. It was caught on video here. You can see the surveillance footage of it. There's also footage from the crashing where you can see the wreckage. Most people die in a situation like this. I mean,
Absolutely. Very, very fortunate. It's obvious that the Most High was watching over that cat.
Blunt about it. Like, it's unbelievable that Errol Spence survived this crash. He was ejected from the vehicle. He wasn't wearing his safety belt. He was hospitalized initially in the intensive care unit, and then he was transferred to a different unit. But a lot of people thought that Errol Spence was never going to fight again, that this was going to be the end of his career. And here,
I never once thought that Errol Spence would never fight again. I knew that as soon as they said that he was still alive and that there was no severe internal damage that they could see, eventually he was going to step back into the ring. Fighters like him, they're born to fight. He would have had to have died to no longer fight again or be paralyzed.
A year later, and an unbelievable thing happened today. Errol Spence just announced that he is making his return to boxing, that he will be fighting Danny Garcia.
And give him credit for no tune-ups, because Danny Garcia is not a tune-up.
On December 5th at AT&T Stadium in Dallas, in front of a live audience. There's going to be a crowd there, but he is going to make his long-awaited and, completely honest with you, unexpected return to the ring, and we'll see if he's, able to kind of reclaim that former greatness that he had before the accident. But good God, you watch that crash video and you think, how does anybody walk away from that? And now he's going to box a year later.
Yeah, the reality is we've seen fatal accidents that look far less serious than that accident.
Absolutely.
Errol, so I think you can't look at that video and not say that he is so fortunate to be alive today. It's awesome that he's coming back. It's great for combat sports. It's great for boxing. He is one of, if not the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world.
Yeah.
I can't give him the title of best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. I have to give that to Lomachenko. And 1B would probably be Terrence Crawford, just going by the eye test, because I don't think that Terrence has fought the level of fighters that either Errol Spence or Lomachenko have fought. And Errol Spence has barely been able to fight top-level fighters, but at least he has a few on his resume. I don't see any top-level fighters that Terrence Crawford has on his resume where going into the fight you said this is a 50-50 fight. And I love Terrence. Just going by the eye test and knowing what I know about boxing, you can see that he's one of the top fighters in the world, if not the top fighter in the world. But compared to Lomachenko's resume and the outcome of Lomachenko's fights, I can't put Terrence Crawford above him. Errol Spence right now, I would say, is a top 10 fighter in the world, arguably top 5. But that was the Errol before this crash. We'll see how he looks on December 5th against Danny Garcia.
What's very cool is that he's actually from Dallas. He's a huge Dallas Cowboys fan, and he loves AT&T Stadium. So the fact that he gets to make his return when he probably shouldn't even be here, at his home stadium.
Well, let's not say he shouldn't be here. We could say there's a possibility that if another person were involved in the same type of accident as him, that they wouldn't be here. But if it was a fact of the matter that he shouldn't be here, he wouldn't, believe me. So it's obvious that he should, because he made it.
Town is a very cool aspect to it, so I'm excited.
Yeah, that comes 3 days after my birthday. I'm a Sagittarius, December the 2nd. You guys need to remember. But no.
Women, especially so-called black women, they're so caught up in the astrology shit. And it hampers them so much in their daily lives because they try to put people in various boxes or categories based on when they were born. And all it does is stop them from having the open mind that they need to have beneficial interactions with people. Oh, that girl, she's a Libra. I don't get along with Libras because I'm a Gemini. And, they try to act balanced. And I'm two-faced. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about, bitch?
Honestly, when I watch that, it literally makes my heart beat fast because of just the sheer what could have happened. And if he wasn't a religious man after that, like he should be, because that's a blessing. Like that is just, like Babcock said, that's a situation where you just would assume.
That's beyond a blessing. That's a lesson. And hopefully he learns the lesson that he was supposed to learn. Number one being that he should not be out there drag racing at 3 o'clock in the morning to see how fast his Ferrari can go. And a lot of these rich athletes love to do that because they become adrenaline junkies. When they become accustomed to performing in their craft in front of 30, 40, 50,000 people, the constant cheers and adulation, they become addicted to that, the adrenaline rush, not only of people being around them, but also the need to just sustain that high in all walks of life. So then it becomes, I need to do coke. Then it becomes, I need orgies. Then they become tired of the women. Next is, I need some trannies because I constantly need new influx of energies. I need to drive my car at 150 miles an hour, 200 miles an hour. And there are a lot of these top athletes who get caught up in these situations. You just don't hear about it because the police pull them over and they see who it is. And they say, okay, but we can't catch you doing this shit again. I remember when LeBron James turned 25, he got pulled over for speeding. I think he was going like 150 miles an hour. That was like the only blip that he ever got caught up in when it comes to law enforcement that was allowed to reach the media anyway. But Michael Jordan was known for speeding back in the day. Charles Barkley always said that if he was to die young, he thought it was going to be in a car crash because he loved to drive fast.
Worse. And so the fact that he's not just recovered, but he's coming back to perform at a high level, being a professional athlete. I mean, that's unbelievable.
And in case y'all forgot, as Roy Jones Jr. would say in this situation, Errol Spence is beating some of the best guys in the business. We're talking Sean Porter, Mikey Garcia,
The Sean Porter fight was by far the best fight that he's had in his career. I thought the best performance was against Kell Brook, but Kell Brook was a little bit past it, especially coming off the ass whooping that he took against Triple G. But I think that Kell Brook fought Triple G on purpose so that if he lost to Errol Spence, he could always blame the beating that he took on Triple G, or from Triple G, I should say. But either way, Errol Spence knows that right now he's writing his own legacy. And the Danny Garcia fight is important. It's not pivotal per se, but it is important. The pivotal fight, of course, is Terrence Crawford, if they can make that fight happen.
There's a lot of...
Mikey Garcia is...
That was a great fight. I remember watching this fight on Showtime, and you could tell that Kell Brook's power was something that Errol had never felt before. But, to Errol's credit, he kept a clear head, he kept his composure. But you could tell that there were certain points in the fight where even just a jab, Errol was like, damn, this guy, he really can punch hard.
He's a great fighter. Errol Spence made Mikey Garcia look like I was in the ring with.
Mikey Garcia also, by the way, and I said this before their fight, I said that Errol's going to have to watch out for Mikey early. He's going to have to just maintain his distance, use the jab, use his footwork and his head movement early. Because Mikey Garcia does have great power. Even at 147, he's just not mobile. Mikey was never able to really make up the distance. And that's to Errol's credit. He kept it on the outside.
Dominant.
And by the way, Danny Garcia, also a top fighter. He was undefeated for a long time until he...
Danny's downfall is his lack of hand speed. And he doesn't have particularly fast feet either. He has great balance and he has good footwork. But his foot speed is not good enough to beat the top guys at welterweight.
Keith Thurman beat him, and then he fought Sean Porter and lost to Sean Porter too. But
literally, Sean Porter and Keith Thurman beat Danny Garcia because of foot speed. Even more than hand speed, mostly foot speed. But Danny, once again, his issues at welter are that his hands and his feet are just not fast enough. Not to beat the top guys.
Even with 11 toes.
It's unbelievable.
Oh, that's a cheat code. He has better balance than every...
This nigga really has 6 toes. He could probably swing from branches by his feet like damn Hank McCoy from the X-Men.
This point, and that's like, what?
So look, Danny Garcia is looking to reestablish himself as one of the top guys in the sport of boxing. He had those two...
Well, Danny Garcia is never going to be one of the top guys in the sport of boxing. Ever. He had a great tenure or time period at the 140-pound weight class. That's where his biggest fights really came. At 147, to be honest, this is where he should top out. This is where he should end his career. Even though I have a very bad feeling he's going to try to end it at 154. Can he get a belt there? I think he can get a belt at 154 if he fights the right opponent. But I mean, if his hand speed is not good enough at 147, when he moves up in weight, his hands are going to be even slower against those top 154-pound guys, unless it's just a lull in the division at that time. And that happens. Sometimes in a division, there's a lull. And above average to good champions, you know, they can accumulate belts. But if you're in a division at a time period where you have transcendent fighters, you're going to have a non-pareil skill set to compete. And I'm not quite sure if Danny has that. Danny has the basics mastered, but there's nothing truly spectacular about what he does. I mean, other than his studding power. He has studding power, especially early.
To kind of put him back a little bit, but a victory over Errol Spence would be huge for him. This is going to be a massive fight. Again, it's going to go down December 5th, AT&T Stadium. Look, congratulations to Errol Spence on just recovering, but the fact that he's going to be fighting at this high level again, really, truly amazing stuff.
Yes, congratulations to Errol once again. Hopefully he's learned his lesson. So peace.